let's get into some hot teams.
Let's go.
With our Sweet versus Heat segment. Sweet versus Heat, brought to you by the team at Subway, whose new Sweet versus Heat chicken sandwiches are making people choose which side they're on. We're going to do it a little differently this week in the sense that instead of two sweet players, we're going to talk about a boatload of players who have had sweet seasons as part of our all-NBA and all-defensive team picks. But before we get there, let's go through two hot teams. So, Wolfon, who is your hot team of the week?
I am going with the Charlotte Hornets. What a run they are on right now after it looked like they were just completely dead and buried. They were 32-39, and this run that they're on kind of started with this heartbreaking loss that they had in Philadelphia. A game that was sort of within their grasp. Embiid wasn't playing in that game, and they just couldn't really pull through down the stretch. And since then, they've reeled off 4 straight wins in seemingly increasingly improbable fashion. It starts with them beating the Wolves, which, okay, ho-hum. But then they come back from 18 points down with like 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter to beat the Boston Celtics. Kemba just went off down the stretch in that game and prompts Kyrie Irving to come out after that game and be like, I don't know why we're not just trapping Kemba like every other team does. So the next game, the next night, the second night of a back-to-back, they go into Toronto to play a Raptors team that was like 29-7 at home. And lo and behold, the Raptors trap Kemba, and he ends up with 13 assists as they just go bonkers from three-point land, which included one of the most incredible game winners that I have ever seen from Jeremy Lamb. 52-foot bank shot as time expired. And then 2 nights later, they managed to outlast the San Antonio Spurs in overtime. Kemba once again just absolutely goes off down the stretch. And all of a sudden, they're back in the mix, just a game and a half out of a playoff spot, and they have games left against the Pistons and the Magic. That game against the Magic, the last game of the regular season,
the schedule is looking beautiful.
Could be huge, or maybe not, because the Hornets have this like tough 4-game Western Conference road trip coming up, so it might not actually matter. But I just wanted to shout them out because this team really needed something good and inspiring to happen just at some point this season, and I just want to show them a little bit of respect for, managing to offer a little bit of hope in what's otherwise been a hopeless year.
Yeah, you mentioned a game and a half out of a playoff spot. They're 2 games back in the loss column of 6th. Like the bottom of these playoff race, as much as we made fun of it for being sad because most of the teams are like hovering around 500.
Yeah.
Look, I'd say especially this year, even like the Hornets and the Magic, they're bad teams, mediocre at best, but they're like better than that range would usually be in the East in previous years. And it's exciting as hell when you consider the fact that all these teams are basically playing each other at some point over the next couple weeks. 2 games separate 6th to 10th in the loss column. And that could affect the rest of the East because it matchups in the first round and like the bracket, it's, I don't know.
Nobody wants to play Orlando.
I don't know if I'd go that far.
No, but I also just want to say, obviously I don't expect any of these teams to win a round in the playoffs. They're not going to factor in when it comes to who's competing for a championship. But a lot of these teams have, unique qualities about them and are actually pretty enjoyable to watch. And don't just casually dismiss them. You know what I mean? Like, give the Nets a watch. Give the Orlando Magic a watch. Give the Hornets a watch. Frankly, they can be a pretty fun team to watch. I've always adored watching Kemba Walker play. And he's been on just another tear lately, kind of akin to how he started the season. So I think, if you're looking for intrigue down the stretch, that's where it's at right now, is the 6 through 9 in the Eastern Conference.
6 through 10, man.
6 through 10.
Yeah, but also, you're saying give them a watch as if, people... what the hell else are you watching if you're watching the NBA in the last couple of weeks of the season and you're not watching this race or I guess, the West seeding breakdown? Because I got news for you. Look at the top teams. Milwaukee obviously got a great win last night, but for the most part, Milwaukee, Golden State, Toronto, Denver got blown out against Indiana the other night. Most of these top teams are very clearly in cruise control mode, just waiting for the playoffs. The bad teams are tanking. It's only that middle ground, the teams that you usually don't want to watch. Guess what? They're the only ones worth watching right now because they're the only ones with something to play for.
Yeah. Well, I do think those logjam teams in the West that are sort of jockeying for positioning, they're playing with a lot of desperation as well. But just all ththese teams are going all out every night in pursuit of a playoff spot. And a playoff spot would mean a ton to these teams. You think about what a playoff spot would mean to Charlotte as Kemba Walker heads towards free
Charlotte,
agency.
who could only get 14,000 for that game last night against San Antonio, by the way.
And, you think about what it would mean for Orlando, who haven't made the playoffs since 2012. You think about what it would mean for the Nets, who have come so far in such a short amount of time after what looked like just a harrowing rebuild that could take like a decade.
And as a free agent pitch, too, for the Nets.
Right. So, I think a lot of these teams do have a lot at stake. Even if it's just one and done, I think it would mean a lot to any which one of them to make it in.
Well, let's stay in the scintillating Southeast Division. My hot team of the week, the Orlando Magic, winners of 6 straight, spoiled Bosch night in Miami by beating the Heat. On the second night of a back-to-back, too, they beat the Sixers the night before. That's a pretty good sweep of a back-to-back for a team trying to get back in the playoffs. And with 6 straight wins, the Magic, who, much like you were talking about the Hornets, I thought were kind of dead and buried a couple weeks ago. The Magic now in 8th. They're in a playoff spot with a couple weeks left in the season. They're a game under 500. They actually are one of 7 teams in the East with a positive point differential, if you can believe that. And they're coming. They're a game back of 6th.
And they have games against the Pistons and Hornets left on the schedule.
Yeah, and here, they do have a tough schedule. They have 7 games left. 5 of them are on the road. Yeah. And all 5 of those road games are against East teams, either in a playoff spot or in this like jockeying for a playoff. So it's going to be tough for the Magic to close it out, I think. But you never know.
I agree with the schedule, but if you like some of those teams, they're going to play in Toronto one of those games, in Boston the second last game of the season. Those teams might just be locked into their seeds at that point in time and not necessarily throwing their A lineups out there. I also think that the Magic are the best out of these 5 teams, qualitatively. So I would still actually, peg them to snag one of those last spots. And I've been pretty high on this team all season long. We did a Sweet versus Heat segment. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago when they were on a similar run, and I picked them then as my Sweet team. So I, appreciate this pick. Obviously, I think we're going to get into our All NBA teams in a bit, but Nick Vucevic has made a pretty strong case to be one of those centers. He has had an unbelievable year. I think he deserves to be in the most improved player conversation, frankly. Like, he's just been so good. And I think we've talked a lot about what he's been able to do offensively, his ability to score down low, his ability to stretch the floor, his ability to pass. But defensively, I think he's made great strides this year as a guy who has just kind of made up for his lack of foot speed with great positioning and great anticipation in the pick and roll. He's been so much better and so much less of a liability than he's been in the past. So he deserves a ton of credit. And, the guys around him have all played quite well. Terrence Ross has had a great season. DJ Augustine, as much as we bag on their lack of quality point guard play, has had about as good a season as you could have expected out of him. And, Jonathan Isaac continues to develop really nicely. This team's been solid defensively all year long. I think if we're looking at teams that one of those top seeds in the East would actually, feel aggrieved about playing in the first round, I'd put the Magic at the top of the list.
Was it you who at the beginning of the year said that one of your bold predictions was that the Southeast winner would have a losing record?
Yes.
You're on track, baby. Because the Orlando Magic, first place right now, a game under 500. My bold Southeast prediction was that someone other than the Wizards would win the division. So.
Yeah. Well, actually, so my bold prediction was that the Wizards would win the division, but that they would do it with 38 wins.
Nice.
So half right for both of us, I suppose.